In the 1960s, hundreds of thousands of people of all races and economic backgrounds across America joined together to protest the unjust treatment of people of color. Omaha, much like many other places in the U.S., had its own civil rights struggles that was aggravated by growing economic despair in the black community. By the late 1960s, the good life provided by employment at meat packaging plants and the Union Pacific Railroad was fading. By the end of 1969, 3 of the 4 major meatpacking companies had closed. For the first time in over 50 years in Omaha, thousands of African Americans were either unemployed or underemployed at low-paying domestic jobs, as many white businesses in the local area refused to hire blacks. As the jobs went, so went many of the stores and services that catered to Omaha's black community. When those who had money ventured out, they found that their commerce was not wanted in many of the white stores and establishments in Omaha. North Omaha had become isolated and almost non-existent to Omaha's white community. With little or no interaction between the races, many white Omahans looked upon blacks with curiosity and fear. In 1964, the American Lutheran Church's film ministry, the Lutheran Film Associates, began a project to try to help their congregations adjust to the impending social change in America. To film this most important project, the church chose director Bill Jersey, a pioneer in the provocative filmmaking technique the French call cinéma vérité, or cinema of truth.
Well, it started, I was doing network television for NBC, and I'd done some primetime network shows which got a lot of publicity and so forth. And so Bob Lee of Lutheran Film Associates had seen the shows, and he felt that the church wanted to do a show with that kind of technique and quality. So he contacted me and asked if I was interested in doing a film on the church's response to racial tension. And I was quick to say, as I think anyone would, you mean the church's response, not the church's solution, not the church's understanding of. And he said, yes, response. Neither he nor I knew what we were in for. We knew we were beginning a journey, and we knew we were beginning a journey with an unknown end. Because, as I told him, I don't write scripts. And conventionally in the 60s, for films that were sponsored by organizations or institutions, a script was written so that the sponsor would know exactly what he or she was getting, and then therefore they could take comfort that nothing embarrassing would occur. Well, the Lutheran Film Associates were willing to take the risk of doing an unscripted film.
The documentary was titled A Time for Burning, a real-time film about racial integration and attitudes in Omaha in 1966. The setting for the documentary was the Augustana Lutheran Church, where Pastor William Youngdahl asked his congregation to reach out to the black community by socializing with black churches and families near the area.
I think the Christian community has a great opportunity today to really help change the climate. You know the myth that the white man is inherently superior to the black man? This myth has plagued us for such a long time.
In this cinema of truth, director Bill Jersey let the dramatic events play out, using very effective facial close-ups with a variety of camera angles to convey the weight of the question of integration.
This one lady said to me, Pastor, she said, I want them to have everything I have, so I want God to bless them as much as He blesses me. But he says, Pastor, I just can't be in the same room. It just bothers me.
The few particulars that make Omaha different from New York are just incidental. The problem exists because white people think they're better than black people, and they want to oppress us, and they want us to allow ourselves to be oppressed.
I agree with you perfectly. This is the basic problem.
Then what do you
that white people think they're better
What's it
than
that I can
others.
do? I can't solve the problem. You guys pull the strings that close schools. You guys draw the boundaries that keep our kids restricted to the ghetto. You guys write up the restrictive covenants that keep us out of houses. So it's up to you to talk to your brothers and your sisters and persuade them that they have a responsibility. We've assumed ours for over 400 years.
The Augustana Church Council begrudgingly agreed to Pastor Youngdahl's request. Teenagers from Augustana visited the nearby Calvin Memorial Presbyterian Church. A few weeks later, youth from Calvin Memorial visited Augustana. After the visit from Calvin Memorial, the Augustana Church Council strongly recommended that activities of these sorts cease immediately. Pastor Youngdahl was pressured to resign by the church council, and he did so within a few weeks after the integrated service.
And perhaps one of the most meaningful moments for me was when the minister resigned, and I said to the Lutheran Church, this is not what you had in mind, this is not what I had in mind, but this is what's true. You cannot, you don't have to release it, you can put it in a closet if you want, you own the film. And they said, no, we're going to release it, and they did.
After Youngdahl's resignation, Victor Schoonover became the pastor of Augustana Lutheran Church.
In 1969, I returned to Omaha after my schooling and serving pastorates in other cities, and was invited to come here to begin an office of Metropolitan Ministries for the Lutheran Church. And shortly after I arrived, I came in February, and then later that year, the riots occurred on North 24th Street, and 24th Street was in flame. And at that time, the Methodists, the Presbyterians, the Roman Catholics, and the Lutheran urban ministries formed a kind of a coalition and tried to become the conscience for the white community and for our churches in trying to explain some of the reasons and some of the background for this. They were very tense times, very emotional times, and that impacted congregations all over the city, but really impacted congregations in this area where Augustana Lutheran Church is, 38th and Lafayette. And as a result of all of those things, and a result of a previous thing, the Time for Burning incident here, this congregation had to face the issues of where it was and where it was going to go. And after a year of very intensive self-study, they decided that they would stay here in this community because there was a move to move out into the suburbs. They decided they would stay into this community and open their doors to the community and seek to become a part of the community, which they did. And so as a direct result of those things, a program called Project Embrace was started, which is still going today, some 35 years later. To my knowledge, the oldest neighborhood outreach program for kids in the city. We got involved as a congregation in housing, Habitat for Humanity. We got involved in the whole welfare system, a study of that and how we could help form the pantries. And so there were a whole bunch of outreach programs. And after that decision to stay and expand, many more members of the congregation left and went to the suburbs and left a core group here who were committed and who are still here and still working toward those ends.
In October of 2008, A Time for Burning was shown at the Film Streams Theater in Omaha. Director Bill Jersey and some of the participants in the film attended the screening to discuss the film and what it means today.
As a church, the world is going to pass us by on the biggest issue of our lifetime. And I perhaps am being over dramatic when I suggest, where were the people of Germany when the issue of the Jews came up? Where was the church, both Catholic and Lutheran?
You know, when you're going through a paradigm shift, you're bewildered, confused, and some people call it the pendulum effect. You're glad you do it, you're
glad you're doing it. No, you shouldn't have done it. No, you're glad you're doing it. You shouldn't have done it. And there was a lot of that at first. But then my wife, June, and I decided, no, this is our stand. And we really stuck to that. And proudly so.
I'm Dan Goodwin Sr. Much of the movie was filmed in my barber shop. In fact, we're sitting right there right now, who's in the chair.
So I would say to everyone here, it's not about saying that you're a Christian with your mouth. And yet God is merciful. Thank God He's merciful. He gives us time to step in line with what His will is. So here we are still today. What are the moral issues that God is looking at today? What is God's heart today? It's about His kingdom, not ours. What is God trying to do today? What is God? It wasn't about just Augustana Lutheran Church. God is speaking to every person, every Christian. Where are you with me today? And He's still speaking through this film right now.
I'm Janice Orduna, and I have a twofold interest, I guess. I was a member of the Calvin youth group that did the exchange with Augustana, and also years later I was on staff at Augustana. So.
This whole experience for Augustana has been such a gift for us because, as you can imagine, when it first came out, it was embarrassing, and it was produced a lot of anger in the congregation. So between embarrassment and anger, a lot of healing started. The gift to us was that we had the unique opportunity to see on film who we were. You know, we all can assume or think we know who we are, but when you see it in vivid black and white, and see how you really think and how you really speak and how you really act in the world, what a gift for us to be able to say, are we like that? Is that who we are? Oh my goodness. What must we do? Who can we become? What must we become? How can we be God's people?
And what became of Pastor Youngdahl? Shortly after his resignation from Augustana, he moved from Nebraska to lead a quiet and private life. A few of Augustana's members still keep in touch.
I talked with Bill Youngdahl less than a week ago, and I said, Bill, if you were here, what would you ask or say? And it was very simple. He said, I would ask, are you making progress? Okay. What would you say, Bill? And if you are, celebrate it. Celebrate the progress. No matter how slow, you've got to keep working and celebrating progress so you strengthen yourself for the next challenge. That was from Bill.
What kind of attitudes are you sharing with others, your friends, your children, when it comes to race relations? What is your race relations vocabulary? I've heard so many Christians use the word nigger. By what we say, by how we act, we teach, we witness.
Even though William Youngdahl's project failed, he can certainly be credited with launching an intimate dialogue among people who call themselves Christians. A dialogue that revealed how they truly measured up to God's most basic principle: love your neighbor as you love yourself. A Time for Burning earned an Academy Award nomination and is one of only 25 films of all time that are registered in the Library of Congress. Most importantly, the documentary was monumental in revealing how profound and widespread racial polarization had become in America. A perfect storm of civil unrest and racially motivated violence from sea to shining sea.
What happens to a dream deferred? Does it drive like a raisin in the sun? Or faster like a sword and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat? Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? Yeah, yeah, yeah. What if I want it, I do, and I do. What if I want it so true?